It was too late to be out alone. Sarah was driving home from a friend's house, laughter still lingering in her mind, when she noticed her fuel gauge was perilously low. She pulled off at the first petrol station she could find, grateful to see its dim neon lights cutting through the darkness. The station was nearly deserted. A single flickering light cast long, eerie shadows across the cracked asphalt. A chill ran down her spine as she parked by the pump, the silence of the night pressing in around her. She told herself she was being silly. It was just a quick stop, she'd fill her tank and be back on the road in minutes. As she stepped out of her car, she noticed movement in her peripheral vision. Standing near the edge of the station, two figures loomed, faces obscured by dark masks. They stood motionless, just watching her. Her pulse quickened, and she forced herself to look away, fidgeting with the pump as she struggled to calm her racing heart. When she glanced back, the figures had moved, closer now. They were approaching, slow and deliberate, their shadows stretching across the ground toward her. Sarah felt her breath catch as dread crept over her. She wanted to believe they were harmless, just messing around. But something about their silence, the way they watched her without moving, without a word, filled her with a gut-wrenching fear. Heart pounding, Sarah quickly slid back into her car, slamming the door and locking it. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, barely able to dial 911. She whispered a frantic plea for help, eyes fixed on the figures as they drew nearer. One of them raised a hand, tapping lightly on her window. She froze, paralyzed by fear, as the masked face peered at her. Just inches from the glass, the seconds felt like hours as she sat, trapped and helpless, praying for the police to arrive. The masked strangers lingered, unmoving, their dark figures looming in the glow of the single, flickering light. Just when she thought she couldn't bear it any longer, the distant sound of sirens cut through the silence, growing louder by the second. The figures turned, their shadows retreating as they melted back into the darkness. Relief flooded through Sarah as the police car pulled into the station, its flashing lights illuminating the empty lot. The officers found no trace of the strangers, no sign of what they might have intended. Sarah never learned who they were or why they had followed her that night. But as she drove away, her heart still pounding, she knew one thing for certain: she would never stop at a petrol station alone in the dark again.